Hello and welcome to my channel Making Crafts. This is part 2 of the Expandable journal. If you've missed part 1, I will link to it below so you can see how I created the expandable pages. So now that we have our expandable pages done, let's move on to our other pages in the book. And so here are the ones I think I'm going to just be adding. So the first one that we need to cut down is our little grocery bags or lunch bags. I think that's what you call these, lunch bags. And so these are just your basic lunch bags. I don't know if I got them from Walmart or if I got them from the Dollar Tree. I think Walmart, but I can't say for sure. I think I've just had them for a long time. And these measure 5 by 11. So I need it to measure 10. So I'm just going to trim them down to 10 inches. And I've gone ahead and trimmed one down, but I don't have them all trimmed down. So I just want them, since this is a 5 by 5 journal, I need to cut them down to 5 by 10, which the bag itself, thank goodness, is 5, so that's why I can use it. And then the just trimming the ends off is all I have to do. Just want to get that lined up correctly. So I'm just going to trim those. And then I'm going to use some file folders that I have. I have tons of these. If you don't have file folders, you could use another piece of cardstock. Just use anything that you want to add to it. So first I'm going to cut them down to 5 inches. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to do this. So I'm going to do 5 inches wide. And so this journal is going to have 3 signatures. Each signature will have one of the expandable pages, as well as I think I got that a little crooked here. Hold on. As well as some of these other pages. And so we're going to have 3 signatures that way. So since the file folder already has these score lines here, let me see if I can hold it up. They're about a 1/4 inch wide. So instead of cutting this 5 by 5, I'm going to cut it 5 1/4. And then I'm going to have to trim just a little off. So let's cut it at 5 1/4 first. And then the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to use one of those score marks just to add another little for our spine here for this page. That way we can add some more bulk because these expandable pages are bulky. So that way it will all fit together. So then that gives us our 5 inch. So then I'm gonna put it back in here and I'll just trim it down. And you could just open it up and cut it differently, but that's it, the easiest way for me to get my 5 inches. So we'll do this at 5 1/4 as well. You're wasting a little bit of a 1/4 inch when you do that, when you have to trim it off, but that's no big deal to me. Because I have tons of these and I'm just trying to use them up anyway. So then I'll just scoring on that, just pressing it on those score lines, just so we have this little extra spine there. And then I'm just going to hold it up here at 5, and I'll trim that little 1/4 inch off. And I've gone ahead and I cut one. And when I cut it, I didn't think about using that part until after I had it cut. So it's a little short, but I'm going to go ahead and use it because I have a way to make that work. But if you're going to go ahead and cut these from new file folders, then you want to cut it so it's 5 1/4 and then trim that little extra off once you use this. So I think I want to add these sheets as well. And I kind of like the little dots up there. So I'm going to cut it off of this side when I cut it down to 5 inches. So I've gone through and I've inked my expandable pages, and I'll show you, I didn't ink the inside here because I didn't want to mess up this seam, but I did ink the back side and the edges, and then I inked the edges. Well, actually I did not ink these. I've got to go back and ink the inside edges. And then for this one, I inked the front and back, but I did not ink the lines here. I didn't want to ruin the seam on that one. But on the back, you can see that I did ink all those lines. So you can see all the different lines I inked there. And then for the third one, I just inked around everything, front and back. And so I did put the lines in there, and I really like how this has turned out. So now for the, let me set these aside for just a second. So now for the file folders that I cut down, I went ahead and I sewed around them. And I may need to go back and ink those. I forgot about that. I also sewed around all of my paper bags. And then here are the pages. I didn't sew those, but I have marked my holes that are for my stitching. So what I did was I just measured a 1/2 inch down from the top, because this is 5 inches tall. So I measured down a 1/2 inch and then poked my hole. Then again at 2.5, and then again at 4.5. So that way it's even 1/2 inch from the top and bottom, and then this is in the center. So I've done all of these. So let's put our signatures together. So let's pull them all out. We're going to have 3 signatures like I said before. So this is, I think this is going in the first one. So for this one, we're going to punch the holes here to stitch it in. So I'm going to go ahead and get my guide, and I'm going to lay it on here and do that, I do believe. So we're just laying this out, and we're going to stitch from the, so this is, we're going to stitch in right here. So we're going to punch our holes on this 5-inch score line. So I'm just going to lay this on it, or I may use my ruler instead. I'm going to sit here. I may can just set this here and see my dots. I think that would be fine. So we're going to put a hole here, here, and right there. So there's our holes. And I've just got a little, I'm not sure, like a foam mat underneath here that I'm using. So for that one, that is where the holes are going to go. So to make our signature for this one, we're going to put this in the middle. So our expandable pages, I think on all of them will go in the middle, because I think that's going to be the easiest way to sew them in. So I want to start out with my file folder and then one of my bags. So I'm going to fold the bags differently in each signature. So this time I've got the little pocket on the outside. And then I'm just going to put it in here. And I think I'll go ahead and punch the holes on this as well, because we've got this made into a little 1/4 inch spine here. So let's punch the holes on this spine as well. So I'm just going to lay this right up into the center of this spine. And then I'll get my holes punched in there. There we go. So then we'll have our bag, and our bag needs some holes as well. Let's just use this guide again for our bag. Okay, so we have our file folder, our bag, our page, and then we will have our expandable page, and that is one signature. So these are going to be fairly small signatures, but when you get all these expandable pages in there, I think it's going to bulk it up some. And so I think when I count it up, we'll have around 36 pages, maybe more. We'll count this when we get done. So I'm just going to do each signature that way, but let's go ahead and let me show you where to put the holes on each one of your expandable pages. So for this expandable page, we're going to punch our holes up here at the top. So I'm just going to use another one of these sheets as my guide. Make sure I can see where the holes are. I think I'll need to poke them just a little bit here so I can see. There we go. So then I'll just lay it up here. And we'll just line it up. I want to make sure I'm at the lined up straight and lined up and down evenly. I think I'll just put it in here like this. I think it's going to be the easiest way for me to get this lined up. And then I'm just going to punch little holes in there. So for this one, your holes are at the top of your little 5-inch score line there. And then for the last one, I'm going to turn it this way, and our holes are going to go on the left-hand 5-inch score line there. So let's just lay this in there. I'm going to fold it up like that so I can see where my, just want to make sure everything's lined up, you know, top and bottom here, so that you have your 5 inches correctly. And I'm just going to poke a little hole in. Oops, that moved just a little, so make sure we got them lined back up. I know you can't see, but I'm just poking little holes in there. I'll go through and make them just a little bigger because my needle won't fit through if I don't. Okay, so for this one, once again, we'll have to, I'm going to show you how I sew it together, but this one will go in the center. And let me put these together and then I'll show you. So I am going ahead and creating the cover, and it's just a quick cover, and it's just like how I do all my other covers. Or most of my covers, I am just using a piece of fabric, and this is really soft fabric. I don't know what it is, but I really like it. And it was sent to me from a lady on Facebook. She sent this to me, and I really thought it would go good with this journal. So I've cut it down to 6 by 12, and I've cut down 2 pieces, and then I have a piece of cardstock that I've cut down. And I cut it down to 6 by 12, but then I made it just a hair smaller, you can see here, so that it doesn't hang out the edges. And so I'm just going to sandwich it in between, and then I'm just going to go sew around it. And I'm trying to decide if I want to straight stitch around it or if I want to do a zigzag stitch all the way around. So when I get to stitching, I guess that's when I'll decide. I went through and I zigzagged around the edges, and I should have glued this fabric down a little bit more. I glued just in the center and left the edges, but this fabric is really stretchy, so it puckered some, but I'm okay with that because I think it adds to the texture, and this is a junk journal, and I like to see a lot of texture, and I wanted to keep strings hanging, so I am okay with it not being completely flat. So now I'm going to take this piece and I want to fussy cut this out just around the outer edges of this wreath, and then I want to fussy cut this piece out, and I've got a little glare right here, and I want to add it to the front of the cover. So I'm going to cut these out first and see how they look. I don't know if I'll use both, but I want to cut those both out, and I might even cut out this little card here, but I haven't decided yet. I was thinking about her on the front, but I think she's too big for the front. Okay, so I changed my mind just a bit. I did fussy cut this and the little wreath out that I showed you I was going to cut out, and then I totally changed my mind and decided to cut out the girl. And this was a piece from the other side of the paper that the girl was on, and so I've just cut out a little square here. It measures almost 5 by 5.5, so it's not quite square, it's a rectangle. And then I have sewn around it with a straight stitch and then a little messy stitch, and then I'm going to layer the girl on top of this piece of paper. But I've also brought out some lace here that I want to use. I want to use some black lace and then some of this cream colored crocheted lace. So let's work together layering this up now. So this is my cover, and I want to keep it folded here so I know, where the center of the cover is. So I'm going to glue on this back piece using my Fabri-Tac since I'm attaching it to the fabric. And then I'm going to add the image of the girl, but first I want to add my lace. And so I have chosen some lace here that was in my stash that I'm just going to add to the side here. Let me see what's the right side and the wrong side of the fabric. I think this is the correct side. So I'm just going to first start out by just running a bead of Fabri-Tac down the edge of my fabric here. And then we'll add some more once we get it positioned correctly. Get my tool out, if I can find it. This one will work. This isn't the one I was looking for, but it will work to press it down so I don't get the glue all over my fingers. So I'm just going to add some glue now onto the cardstock so that I can press this down. Then we'll trim it off. Before I get much further, I forgot I wanted to trim that off there. Okay, and at the top here. There we go. I want to layer the crocheted lace on top, so I just need to cut down a piece to fit here. I do like it like that, so I'm just going to add it right there at the edge. And then I'm going to attach the girl just using my art glitter glue. So we have our cover completed now, and I have all of the signatures put together. So what I've done is I've put like I did with the first one, I put the expandable page in the center. Let's start with the very beginning for each one. At the beginning, I have my file folder, then my paper bag, then my piece of memo paper, and then my expandable page. And it's like that for each one of them. I did them all the same. I just rotated how the bag was positioned, and then your expandable page. And so they're all exactly like that. So now let's go ahead and sew in our signatures. So for the first one, we're going to do our middle signature first. Just decide which one you want in the middle, and then you're going to sew it in first. So I'm going to find the center of this cover, and my cover measures 12 inches. I do believe it's a little over, so I'll just kind of eyeball this, centering it up here, and then we're going to find the center, and then I need to mark my center, and it's going to be at 6 inches. I'm going to use a pencil to mark that, so I'm just going to put a line there, and that way I can come back and erase it. So let me just put it right here. It's centered up right on my mat here. I'm going to use my mat to help me center it up, and then I'm just going to use the line here on my mat to help me draw a little faint line down the center with my pencil, and then I can erase it. We have our center, and you want to use something that you could even use one of those marking pens that like you use for quilting that just kind of dissolves and disappears. But I'm not really concerned because this is going to be covering it up anyway, but I did use pencil. So now that we have our center marked, we need to find the center of our cover from top to bottom. So we know that it is 6 inches. I'm almost certain it's 6, yes. So we know at 3 is going to be our center. So I'm just going to mark that real quick right there. And then I'm going to use this sheet that we used as our guide for each one. We had a sheet like this. I'm just going to use it here as my guide to mark my holes. So I'm just going to use it to mark the first one on that line. Go through the cover there, and then let's just put a dot here. That's correct, and then a dot down here. So that way everything's going to line up good when we go to sew. There we go. So now we're just going to sew this one in first, and then I'll add the next ones as I go. I'll mark them and add them. So we have our signature here. Let me get these put back in. It goes this direction. Get everything lined up. I'm going to just take and put my awl through there and get the whole thing lined up. So here it is lined up, and I'm just going to clip it for now, just to hold that together. So with our expandable page, we have to open it up in order to sew it in, because if you remember, we put our holes here. So this has to be opened up in order to sew it in so that our flaps don't get in the way. Now that one could lay down, but the other two may be in the way when we try to sew it in. So I'm just going to take and put this in the book. So I have just waxed some of the cotton thread that I have. I just have a spool of cotton thread, and then I run it through some beeswax. And so I've just attached it to my needle. And I am just going to run my needle through the book itself, the pages itself first. And then I'm going to go through my cover. That way I can get everything lined up there. I'm just going through the center and I'm sewing just like you normally would. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew this in. Okay, so now that I have it through the center hole, I'm going to take my needle and press the top hole there because it is hard to find it. And then I'm going to watch on this side because of my fabric. Your fabric may not be as hard to see through or see your hole, but this one has been really hard to see the hole. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'll go through my book pages. And I think the way these are, I'm just going to go through a few pages at a time. It's no big deal. So I get everything lined up right. I don't want to make any extra holes in my book, in my pages. So there we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and just pull this through. Nothing says it has to go through all the pages in one stitch. And then I'm going to come through this one so I can gently make sure I don't mess up any of my pages. This one's a little bit more fussy than some of my other journals. That's okay. We can take the time. Sometimes it's good to take and do a project that takes a little bit of time. We don't have to rush through with them. Okay. I'm just going to go back through. I have to pull this a little bit. Then go back through the bottom hole. And I'm going to open these flaps up because they're getting in my way. There, we're coming up there. So once I got all of my sewing done, I'm just tightening it back up because it wasn't really tight as I was sewing it. But I don't want to rip my paper, so I'm being really careful not to rip the paper. And then I'm just going to tighten it up here in the center and tie it in. So earlier we found the center and it was around 6 inches. So I'm just going to go 1/4 inch over and I'm going to mark at 5 3/4, and I've gone ahead and put a mark there. And so now I'm just going to line it up with my mat with a straight line, and I'm just going to use a pencil to draw a little line in there so that I know where to put my dots. And I'm going to go ahead and do that on the other side too. So on the other side I'm going to mark at 6 1/4. It's going to be another 1/4 inch. So we have one line at 5 3/4, then we had our 6 one in the middle, and now 6 1/4. So now let's just mark the dots on it that we're going to put our holes. So I'm just going to once again use this sheet that we've been using all along to help mark our spaces. So I'm just going to center it up in here. So once again, I need to measure the center, which is going to be 3, and I'm just going to mark the 3 there. And that should match up with the center of our paper here that we've got our dots on, or got our holes on, our guide, I guess I should say. And then we're going to mark there. And let's just go over to the other side and do the exact same thing. We're going to need to mark the center again, which is 3 inches since it's at 6, and we're marking it on our line here. And then that's how we line our guide up. We're going to mark here on the line and mark here. So there we have our spots for our holes. So let's go ahead and make those holes. So for the next expandable page, if you recall, we put our holes down here. So we're going to have it open when we do this. And this one is going to be really fussy, I do believe, because it's going to want to fold up while we're doing this. So we're just going to have to be really careful with it and just try to work with it. And once again, we're just going to start in the center hole. And I'm going to have to hold it to the light to see it on this one. So I'm just going to, once again, I found with the other one, I needed to do them individually some. And that's okay, because we don't have a lot of pages, so we can do that. We can slowly sew it in, going through each individual page to do this. And then I'm just going to go right back through the center here. Do want to find that hole we already made. We're just sewing it like we normally do a journal in, except, like I said, we're having to be a little bit more fussy with it and go through each layer individually. Okay, so I want to keep it real and let you know I'm really enjoying this, making this journal, but I will keep it real and let you know that it is a little hard to sew these pages in, a little harder than some journals. So just be patient with yourself and with the journal and just take your time and work with it. And don't get stressed. Don't feel like you have to do it quickly. It's okay that if it takes a bit to get these pages in. Just go slow so you don't destroy your pages that you've created. So then we'll just fold it back up, fold our signature up, and now we have 2 signatures in. And so now it's time for our last signature, and for this one, we have this expandable page, and if you recall, our holes are at the top here. So it folds down like this. So we're going to have to open it up, leave this folded down, and stitch it in. So here's our basic journal. We still have pockets and we have decorations and things to add to it, but we have our base completed. And I will say that sewing in the signatures was a little tough, but just take your time. Do like I did. If you have to do 1 page at a time, do 1 page at a time. It's not that big a deal because you're only sewing in, 3 little signatures. So it's okay if it takes a little extra time than some of our other journals. But I do like how it turned out. So I will be back another day to show you how I decorate it, and we'll decorate this one together, and let's see what we can come up with using the tags we've already made, using this Decoupage Queen paper, as well as we have some of the paper left over, so we'll use some of that to make some decorations, and we'll see what else we can pull out and add to this one. So there is our journal. I do think it probably needs some inside pockets, and we'll have to think about that, what we want to add here. It's too late to sew them in now, but we can still glue some pockets in. So that's how far we've gotten with it. So I will be back with another video showing you how I decorate this one. And I hope that you have enjoyed this process so far, part 1 and part 2. If you've not seen part 1, I will link to it in the description below as well so that you can take a look on how I created the expandable pages in that video. And so I will be back with a 3rd video decorating it up, and then I think we'll be done with it. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.